Hi there, it's Ainsley again. For this culminating task, I read 3 incredible articles, all of which held great meaning to not only our unit and the literature we analyzed, but also to real-life events. The first article I read and analyzed was called Why Power Corrupts. This was a magazine article written about psychological studies done on people to determine whether or not it was power itself that created corruption. In running a study on over 200 people, they had half write out events that made them feel powerful and half write out an ordinary event. They then made everyone take a moral identity test. The results were scaled based on how highly you believed in and abided by your morals. At the end of the test, they held a mock lottery and told everyone they could take up to 10 tickets. The more they took, the more chance of winning they had, but they were not told how many the unbalancing point for the lottery was. The results concluded that those who had a low moral identity score and had written about something to make them feel powerful were the greediest. Yet those who had a higher moral identity score and wrote about something powerful were the most considerate of others. I think that this study is an excellent example of how not all people who possess power become corrupted. Those who maintain a sense of morals and have good ethics are the best leaders. This proves that it is not power that corrupts. Power is simply attracted by the corruptible. This study showed that the corruptible were people who had weak belief in morals. They also allowed themselves to personally gain from their power without consideration of how it would affect others. In reading this article, I learned that not all people who possess power are condemned to corruption. It is a choice that they make, whether they let themselves become consumed by their power or whether they use it to the benefit of others. Power is a dangerous thing to possess. It gives great satisfaction and can be wielded to create amazing opportunities, yet it can also be twisted and used to achieve personal gain. It is when this happens that even the most honest of men become corrupted. The second article I read was called How Power Corrupts Leaders. This article went more into depth of the different ways power can be used and the effects of each one. It introduced me to socialized power and personalized power. Socialized power is when the person in possession of the power uses it to the benefit of others. Personalized power is when the leader uses their power for their own personal benefits, typically at the cost of the follower. It is when a leader gets a taste of the benefits of personalized power that they become corrupted. As soon as they realize that their power can do for them, it's hard to stop. They delude themselves into believing what they're doing is still right for the people. It simply benefits them as well, and this creates greed. Greed is arguably one of the most dangerous human emotions there is. Greedy people do desperate things, and desperation is led by inconsideration. This article also introduced us to exceptions. These exceptions are ones made by both leaders and the follower, and they are what allows corrupted leaders to get away with what they do. An example of this would be for a leader to create some sort of law and enforce it, even though it steals from the follower. The follower, then, instead of thinking it's wrong, thinks, "Oh well, they're the leader, so they must know what's best for us. If he says so, it must be right." This is not the right way. Simply because a person holds power does not mean that they make the right call, because as we've discovered, there can be underlying influences. I really liked this article because it explained how it's not always so black and white. It explained how a leader can have both socialized power and personalized power without becoming corrupt. It used an excellent example of the presidents of the United States. The presidents were exceptional examples of socialized power holders, yet no previous president is a poor man. They personally benefited from being the president, yet they did not feed off of the followers for personal satisfaction. This article taught me that the use of a person's power is everything. It all depends on where your motivation lies. If you only want power for selfish reasons, your possession of power will become corrupt. To obtain power and remain true and honest, you must respect your morals. Do your best to do well by the people who look up to you and not abuse their trust. The third and final article I researched was simply called Power Corrupts. This article was less about emotional manipulation and more about the more real-life side of corruption. It spoke of the things we may never think of as twisted, but brought them front and center into the light. It talked about how many leaders force conformity under the hand of laws and legislations. They create these laws under the assumption that because they hold power, that must also mean that they hold wisdom. This means that naturally they must know what's best for everyone, simply because they are more powerful than anyone else. This is where it becomes dangerous. The more the leader imposes constrictive laws on other persons, the more he strains his own morality. He then acquires multiple advisors who all have the same desire to restrict the general population by forcing them to obey the laws. The more he does this, the further he digs himself into a hole that he can no longer see out of. He loses sight of what is morally right and what is simply politically expedient. I think that this article is important, not only for this assignment, but also for real people to hear. It brings to light many issues that are often left in the dark, because really, who likes dealing with political power manipulation? But in reality, this is a big problem. Leaders who corrupt themselves by self-deception are possibly the most dangerous. They don't realize what they did is wrong, because they convince themselves it is right so many times over that it becomes a force of habit. In reading all three of these articles, I truly believe that it is not power that corrupts people. It is in fact people themselves that create corruption. Whether it be through greed, deception, or weak morals, power is simply not to be possessed by some people. Corruption is a topic with many gray areas, and this makes it hard to define what's right and wrong. This does not make it in any way acceptable. In conclusion, I leave you with this final statement to ponder. It is not power that corrupts people. It is when corruptible people obtain power that it becomes twisted. Thank you for listening.